Hello, everyone, and welcome to our regular Friday webinar. The topic this week is sensory AI. The topic is, what is sensory AI? What do you need to know about it? And lastly, how you can integrate sensory AI through our API within your existing, whether it's a third-party market research app, whether it's doing research through the Tacit platform, or if it's the fact that you just have existing market research data that you would want to have analyzed through our sensory AI. So let's get started. First of all, this is a recent article by the MIT Press, The Atlantic, Wired. Everyone has covered sensory AI. And in particular, they're covering the topic of AI getting armed with multiple senses that could and are gaining more flexible intelligence. It's really all about our human senses like tasting, seeing, feeling, hearing, everything around us. So what does sensory AI mean? Sensory AI is a learning through sensory inputs, is getting information through one of the five human senses: vision, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. Now, in terms of what are we going to do on today's webinar? We'll go through several things. First of all, what is sensory AI? Secondly, how you can unlock additional consumer insights through sensory AI. After that, we'll be going through several showcases of actual usage of sensory AI. And lastly, in a separate video, we'll show you how does a sensory AI API demo looks like. In the end, we'll also address a few topics of why to integrate sensory AI, how can you get enhanced consumer understanding, how effortless is the integration, what can you do with the real-time insights, and then what are some of the examples of customizable solutions that our clients have. So let's get into it. First of all, what is sensory AI? Sensory AI is really the integration of seeing, touching, hearing, smelling, and tasting as a computer system. So today we have kind of two different ends of the spectrum. One is the human sensing, and the other one is artificial machine sensing. And really, sensory AI is kind of in the middle of bridging both collecting, analyzing, interpreting, and understanding human senses, and then on the other side, emulating and doing it all as a machine or as an AI. So today we'll explore how different systems can integrate both human and artificial senses and how that can elevate your consumer insights game. First of all, unlocking consumer insights with sensory AI. There's a quiet revolution happening, and it's primarily happening with analyzing multi-model data sets. And these are really analyzing and decoding the subtle cues from visual, auditory, and other sensory inputs that are providing businesses really a nuanced understanding of consumer sentiment, behavior, and preferences. As a result, the volume for sensory AI has grown by 2,400% over the past 12 months. Sensory AI is primarily referring to the systems that can learn through sensory inputs such as smelling, hearing, seeing. And for example, Meta, one of the big tech companies formerly known as Facebook, is unveiling their image bind AI model, which was published in May this year. And it's really a multi-model sensory database. It has 6 types of sensory data. In particular, it's 6 modes of data. There's no 6 senses, but really it's 6 different types of data that are all being connected around the same stimuli. And while it's still in the early research phase, there really is an explosion of both the research efforts and the commercial efforts. To give you an example of these two, of 2 projects that are really emblematic of what's happening on the market. One is a project called Osmo, and the other one is Image Bind. Osmo is a startup founded by former Google researchers, and it's a joint venture between a startup called Osmo and a Google Cloud team. And what they are aiming to do is really map out the entire odor map preferences and evoked reactions. So here, an example is this principal odor map, which has been launched this year. And here you can see how this Osmo AI-powered odor classification and discovery map looks like, and it was published in September this year. On the flip side, you have an example of the image bind 6 modes of the multimodal database that Meta has published. But really, all that you have to know about this is that big tech is jumping on this bandwagon, and multimodal and sensory data is really becoming omnipresent, not only as a customer insights tool, but really as an entire layer of technology that is starting to form and exist and live across the internet. Now let's go through some of the use cases. The first use case that we have is called AI Perfume. AI Perfume is really any fragrance that is created using artificial intelligence, specifically using algorithms that collect vast amount of data on fragrance composition, customer preferences, and market trends to generate unique combinations. We've seen this in the niche perfume segment, but it's really exploding. And an example of that is a startup called Every Human, which provides a service that they call algorithmic perfumery. Now, what they do is that based on self-report, what we would call explicit traditional market research data or questionnaires, they assemble very specific blends and nuances of fragrance that then they create and ship out to individual consumers. On the flip side, what Google Cloud's team has done, which we mentioned earlier in the Cosmo case, is they're digitizing smell using AI. And in particular, they have analyzed and digitized over 100 million molecules of existing fragrances. Now, to put that in context, there are 40 billion known molecules of odor. So they are only beginning to scratch the surface, but it really tells you that there's a growing and thriving segment of real world projects and products that are all based on sensory AI. Another more realistic example of how to use sensory AI in research is the advances in sensory food tech research. Now, here we have an example of using sensory AI research in wine testing, in particular, not only in product testing, but also in quality assurance testing. Now, an example here is that this entire use case is based on what is known as non-invasive sensory techniques. These are techniques based on biomedical sensor that used to be reserved only for sectors like the healthcare, but now are penetrating really deep into market research, and in particular, in this case, into food research. Now, here in this example, we have a project based on analyzing wine that has descriptive tests, discriminative tests, temporal tests, hedonic tests, but also they are powered by non-invasive sensory techniques in order to collect and analyze this type of data. So really, unlike traditional methodologies, non-invasive sensory techniques offer a more nuanced and a more comprehensive insight into how people are perceiving, in this case, different wine tastes without any intrusive measurements. And now a question is being formed, which is, how do we even get these signals? How do we know in which way do humans react on specific tastes or aromas? And to be very transparent, both fragrances and aromas have been traditionally the most problematic case for traditional market research methodologies. On our webinars, we usually have someone from either CPGs or fragrance houses present, and they know how notoriously difficult it is for their sensory research team to analyze these things. But here we can see how does it go from human olfactory system to an electronic nose system, which we'll get to in a bit. So an example can be, here you can see in this upper corner, when we first are being exposed to a stimuli, which is an odor, that goes to our nasal epithelium. After that, it transforms into a brain signal, which triggers a neuron reaction, which is then trickled down to a decision making. This is how it looks like from an analog perspective. But from a digital perspective, what happens is that sensors get activated, then there is a recorded signal. After that, the signal gets processed, and then we use feature recognition in order to extract meaningful data from that raw signal. A similar thing happens with taste. From taste to human taste buds, to brain, to neurons, and then decision making. A very similar thing goes from samples, electrodes, recorded signal, data processing, and in the end, recognition. And this is how a human system differs from an electronic system. And now we're kind of slowly getting to what are these things? What is an electronic nose? What is an electronic tongue? And why does it even matter? Now, the reason why does it all matter is because that's where the future of sensory AI is going to. So what's been happening is that scientists are getting closer and closer to imitate human senses using devices known as electronic senses. And these are these devices like electronic noses, electronic tongues, computer vision. So what they do is that they use a range of sensors, which are all listed here. They use a range of data analysis methods, and then they are able to leverage these signals, whether it's for prototype testing, food analysis, but in particular for quality control, authenticity, and falsification in the production process, especially for food research. So here we can see that this really is kind of the future of where the technology is going. But if we go back to the Osmo case, if we go back and think about the fact that even Google and Osmo have only mapped out 100 million odors in the context of 40 billion odors, we've only scratched the surface. So although sensory AI with these artificial electronic senses are the future, we're still not there yet. So now the question is, what is there? What is out there on the market that is already proven, cost and time effective, that can be used to bridge the gap between what we want to have, which is all of these electronic senses where there's no human respondence, there's no hassle, there's no logistics, but it's still not quite there yet. And that is the entire debate of sensory AI versus emotional AI. Now, the difference between sensory AI and emotional AI is that these are really related concepts. They focus on different aspects of AI, but really sensory AI is all about replicating human-like senses, but with machines, as opposed to emotional AI is all about analyzing and understanding existing human emotions. So from a human respondent, as opposed to having an electronic system. So really, the sensory AI definition is incorporating sensory capabilities such as vision, speech, other sensory-based inputs to replicate human-like perception. And it's mostly used in fields like robotics, healthcare, automotive, smart devices, etc. And opposed to that is emotional AI, or often dubbed as affective computing, which involves really devices and sensors that are recording, recognizing, interpreting human emotions, existing emotions from human subjects in order to help you understand how they respond to their environment and to different stimuli. And this is mostly used in market research and customer service and mental health and marketing to really help and improve how machines communicate with humans. We can also say that really emotional AI is the first step into having full sensory AI capabilities, but the market is still not there yet. In our live demo, which we'll be showing in a separate video, you can see how we use our two main products to analyze sensory and emotional data from subjects through only audio and video, and also how do we leverage data from sleek wearables such as the Aura Ring that I'm wearing today, from a Whoop, from Garmin, from any of the devices that you may have at home or in your consumer research lab, and then use that as inputs in your research project. So first, our first product is called Tacit LITE. It's really anything and everything that you can do using only audio and video. What's important to know is that this is very scalable and very time and cost efficient. So we can start a project today and we can collect and analyze data by the end of this day. But also we can use the existing videos that you have either gathered through a third party or that you have from existing projects, and we can just analyze them afterwards. So you don't have to have any integration. As opposed to that, we have Tacit Pro, which requires usually what we call a mini lab testing environment, which are typically sleek wearable devices, off-the-shelf devices that you can buy anywhere in the market, are fully certified and easy to use. And then we use that to collect and analyze consumer behavior at scale. So really, our two API features is, one is a Tacit LITE API, only audio and video to get data such as facial coding, speech sentiment analysis, eye tracking, head and body movement, hand movement, and to correlate those reactions to what is happening on the screen, as opposed to Tacit Pro, which collects data from more than 50 different wearable devices that are integrated in our API aggregator. This can be anything from EEG data, so neuro data, cardio data, electrodermal activity, galvanic skin response, respiration rate, body temperature, blood volume pressure, anything on that spectrum. So why to integrate Sensory API? It's really because any market research project that you're doing can both collect physical data, so LITE, physiological data, so Pro, and really a range of custom-made implicit and sensory API data. So any app can deliver feedback on a frame-by-frame, millisecond-by-millisecond data, which is both accurate and actionable for your production teams. And the effortless integration is, first of all, fast and simple. All the documents and information are available now, some at our website, some we can send later via a link through an email, but really inputs anything that is facial coding, speech sentiment analysis, natural language processing of the transcripts that you're saying, eye tracking, upper body movement, and also anything such as EEG, ECG, can be translated to a range of customized metrics. Some of those metrics are basic emotions, alertness, fatigue, engagement levels, areas of interest, so where are people looking at on the screen, and any custom-made KPIs that are available upon reasonable request. And an example that we have are real-time insights that we done for our clients at Sky. And here you can see an example of what we've done for their marketing materials, which are then being analyzed live in real time, and they can see stimuli by stimuli how they perform one against the other, and they can then also select the time intervals, the granularity of the data, and inspect on what works best. So what are the next steps? The next steps is really to use Tacit either as an API, either as a research platform or sensory database. As some of you know, we have a self-funded database where, similar to what Osmo is trying to do with mapping out different odors, we're doing our best to map out different consumer habits and rituals, as well as off-the-shelf products targeted at different segments of consumers. And here is where you can really slice and dice the data, break it down format by format, page by page, and codify what works best for your audience, sliced by demographic, location, format, etc. And the data that we collect is, as mentioned earlier, neuro and cardio data, eye tracking, head and body movement, facial coding, speech sentiment analysis, posture, and a range of other data sets. And really our specialty is that we use a range of off-the-shelf, easy-to-use technologies. So it's mobile phones, laptops, wearables, and all the devices that we use connect to a mobile app, enabling content creators and also researchers to do powerful research at scale. and real time. So that is all from this webinar. Please let me know if you have any questions via email, and looking forward to seeing you on our webinar next Friday.